It would be a great place to people watch, like Venice Beach is here or some other places, but you can't really find a place to stop and watch the people because you're just swept along by this rush of crowd. And if you've ever tried to walk against a New York crowd, I guess the closest analogy out here in Southern California would be, think about what it would be like to drive the opposite way on the 405. Just highly dangerous and impossible, actually, to do it. We should not be surprised when we're trying to move one way, the way of Christ in life, and we get a strong pushback going the other way. Being a Christian sometimes in this world feels like trying to walk against a New York crowd or drive the opposite direction or even the same direction in LA freeway traffic. It's tough. It's tough going. It feels like you're being pushed back the other way. And the reason for that is that we're headed in the opposite direction from most of the world. You see, the way of the world is to try to go up, 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 and then at the end of it all is a crash down to the bottom. Our way is the opposite. Our way is to, as the title of Bill Hybels' book suggests, to descend down to greatness, to humble ourselves, to lower ourselves, to take the form of a servant like Jesus did, to go down, 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 but then the end of it all is to share in his glory, to go up, up, up. So what's happening? We're going down to go up, and the world's going up and doesn't realize it'll ultimately crash down, as we've seen many of the world's systems crash in recent months. We bear both, and the reason for that is we bear both a message and a name that is the polar opposite of what the world out there is after. The world has been spoiled. And when I say the world, I'm using it as a general term. The surrounding culture, the powers that be. It's been spoiled. And this happened, you remember, back in the Garden of Eden. And that spoilage is like the most recent example would be like bad peanut butter. It's this bacteria that gets in there, and you don't know where it's going or who it's going to affect, and you try to trace it and follow it, but it's almost impossible to figure out how and why this happened and where it's all going. It's so pervasive. The scripture teaches us that sin is not just the individual thing that you do, but it's a disease. It's original sin that pervades every fiber of our being and every fiber of culture and society. And so in those times when things seem to be going well and you're moving along and you're in harmony with the world, there's always something else going on. If it's not apparent, it's under the surface. And that helps explain why it is that when our kids simply walk into a school, into a public school, and even some private schools, they face fearsome forces opposing them. I mean, our little Trinity is in the 5th grade this year. And she doesn't want to go to middle school. She knows what it was like for Trevor when he came from, a sort of sheltered school in Africa and was thrust into a public middle school and all the profanity and culture and everything. And why is it that way? It's because of sin. It's because of the world's been spoiled in so many ways. I don't mean to bring you down today. I just want you to realize, when we're trying to go and work for Christ and make progress for him and there's pushback, that's the reason why. When people were just trying to have Christian faith and a Bible study in the year 202 and were killed for their faith, that's why, because sin spoiled the mindset of the Roman state and empire to want to just have it all for themselves and to wipe out the competition. Why does Zimbabwe have outbreaks of cholera and 200 million% inflation and a dictator who won't let go. Because evil has gotten in there. And the faithful are frustrated. Why was the American missionary Chet Bitterman killed in Colombia in the year 1981 simply because he wanted to translate the Bible into a tribal language which had never received the scriptures in their own tongue? Why was he killed for that? Do you remember that story back in 1981? And he was a missionary with Wycliffe Bible translators. And he was there with a group of translators translating the Bible into a tribal language, as were many others in Colombia. And he was taken by terrorists, and these terrorists said their demand was that Wycliffe remove all Bible translators from Colombia. And if they did that, then they'd let Chet Bitterman go. Wycliffe held their ground, and Chet Bitterman agreed with this decision. He was killed. And then the mission agency, Wycliffe, said to all the translators in Colombia, this is a dangerous place. You have the option of getting another assignment. Not one of them requested another assignment. In fact, there was a waiting list for translators to come into Colombia and specifically to take Chet Bitterman's place in that same place where he was taken and killed. And so when there's pushback, what's the Christian reaction? For them, for these translators, it was not to be surprised, but to keep the faith, but to keep going forward, to not give up, and to stand in line for the privilege of suffering for Jesus Christ. As the Apostle John wrote in his first letter, chapter 3, verse 13, "Do not be surprised, my brothers, if the world hates you." And so instead of being surprised